This is the story of a girl that I will read out to you. People always say, love is about sacrifice. I believed that. I lived by it. When my husband, Daniel, was diagnosed with kidney failure and the doctors told us his chances without a transplant weren't good, I didn't even hesitate. I was tested immediately, and when the results came back that I was a match, I cried. Not because I was scared, but because I was relieved. Relieved that I could do something, anything, to save the man I loved. We'd been together for 7 years, married for 5. He wasn't perfect. We had our fights, like any couple, but in the moments that really mattered, he was solid, dependable, loving. Or so I thought. The transplant surgery was scheduled quickly. I remember signing the forms, lying in the hospital bed, and him sitting beside me holding my hand like I was the one who needed saving. He kept telling me how much he loved me, that he didn't deserve me, that he'd spend the rest of his life making it up to me. I believed him. God, I believed every word. The surgery went well for both of us. I was sore for weeks, of course, and the recovery was brutal in ways I hadn't expected. It wasn't just physical. It was emotional. I was tired all the time, in pain. But I kept telling myself it was worth it, that we had made it through the worst of it, that our love was stronger than ever. But slowly, things started to change. Daniel recovered faster than I did. He went back to work while I was still mostly at home. At first, he was sweet, brought me tea in bed, checked in with me during lunch breaks, made dinner when I couldn't move. But that faded faster than I expected. Within a month, he was coming. Home, late, snapping at me over little things, acting distant, cold. I chalked it up to stress, or maybe guilt. He'd had a life-altering surgery after all. We both had. Maybe he was struggling to cope. Then I noticed the texts. I wasn't trying to snoop. He left his phone on the kitchen counter one night when he went to take a shower, and it buzzed. Over and over. I glanced at the screen, more out of reflex than curiosity, but I saw the name. Mel, short for Melissa, his coworker. The messages weren't graphic, not at first, but they were intimate. Inside jokes I didn't recognize, sentences that started with, "Can't wait to see you again," or "Last night was amazing." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen like it had betrayed me, like the letters themselves had punched me in the chest. I wanted to scream or cry, but I did neither. I just stood there, frozen, the tea I had made for him shaking in my hand. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, humming like everything was normal, I said nothing. I handed him the tea. I smiled, and I waited. The next few days, I watched everything with new eyes. How he flinched when I asked how work was, how he angled his phone away from me, how he was suddenly going to meetings on Saturdays. I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. One Saturday, I told him I was going to visit my sister for the day. He barely looked up from his phone when I said it, just nodded and told me to be safe. He left an hour later, dressed up in clothes he never wore to the office, spraying cologne I hadn't smelled in weeks. I got in my car, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd vomit, and followed him. He drove across town, not to work, not to a client's office, but to a small hotel. I parked far enough away not to be noticed and watched him walk inside like it was routine. 30 minutes later, she showed up. Melissa. I recognized her from the company's holiday party a year ago. Pretty, confident, the kind of woman who knew she was being watched. She smiled as she walked into the same hotel, dressed like she knew exactly what she was walking into. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't scream or storm in like in the movies. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My body shook, not from rage, but from something deeper. Betrayal. This man, this person I gave a literal piece of my body to, had been cheating on me while I was still healing. He took my kidney and then took another woman to a hotel. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in silence, staring at the wall until the sun came up. When he walked through the door the next morning, lying about being stuck at a last-minute work meeting, I still said nothing, but that was going to change. Because if he thought I was just going to sit back and let him play the victim, he had no idea who he married. I started documenting everything. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed more than just a few vague texts and a sighting outside. A hotel. If this ended in divorce, and it was starting to look like it would, I needed proof. I needed to protect myself because clearly no one else was going to. I took photos of the hotel, of Melissa walking in. I screenshotted the messages when he left his phone unattended. I even recorded some of our conversations when I casually brought up his work hours and watched him fumble through his lies. My hands would shake, heart racing every time I hit record, but I pushed through. Pain had sharpened me. What hurt the most wasn't just the cheating. It was what it meant. This man I literally bled for, had made a choice. He didn't just betray me. He used me. I was the woman who saved his life, and he repaid me by sneaking around behind my back while I was still recovering from major surgery. One night, while pretending to sleep, I heard him talking to someone on the phone. His voice was low, almost gentle, the way he used to talk to me. "She still doesn't know," he said. "I think she suspects something, but she hasn't said anything." There was a pause, then a chuckle. "No, she's not going anywhere. She gave me a kidney, remember? She's stuck with me now." My breath caught in my throat. My heart didn't just break, it shattered. He thought I was trapped, that because I'd given him a kidney, I would just swallow the betrayal, accept the lies, be grateful for scraps of attention and stay married to a man who was laughing behind my back. I felt sick, physically ill. The next morning, I packed a bag and drove to my sister's. I didn't tell him. I left a note that said, "Don't contact me. I know everything." That was it. Let him stew in that. My sister, Megan, was furious. When I told her everything, she cried, then offered to run him over with her car. I smiled for the first time in days. It felt good to be believed, to be safe. Over the next week, I went full ghost. I blocked his number. I blocked Melissa's too. I called a lawyer. I wanted out, and I wanted to make sure he couldn't manipulate me in court. My lawyer was incredible. She looked over everything I documented and said, "You're going to be fine. He's screwed." But Daniel, he wasn't done. He showed up at my sister's house 2 days later, pounding on the door like he had a right to see me. When Megan opened the door, he pushed past her before she could stop him. "Where is she?" he shouted. I stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, phone in hand. "I told you not to contact me," I said coldly. He looked awful, tired, unshaven, like he hadn't slept in days. "Baby, listen, it's not what you think." "Really?" I held up my phone. "Because I have pictures, Daniel, screenshots, audio. I know about the hotel. I know about Melissa. I know everything." He stared at me, speechless. "You used me," I said. "You let me think we were in this together, while you were out screwing someone else." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "That's what they all say," Megan muttered from behind him. "Look," he said, stepping closer. "I made a mistake. I was scared, okay? I almost died. Everything got messed up in my head. I didn't feel like myself, and she was just there." "Don't you dare try to blame this on fear," I snapped. "You weren't scared when you were lying to me. You weren't scared when you walked into that hotel." He looked down, silent. Then he said the one thing that broke me all over again. "Do you want the kidney back?" It was a joke, a disgusting, heartless joke. But in that moment, I realized just how little he respected what I'd done, what I gave him. No, I said slowly. I want my dignity back, and I'm getting it. Then I turned and walked into the guest room and slammed the door. He left soon after. Megan told me she threatened to call the cops if he didn't. That night, I filed for divorce. It wasn't easy. Nothing about it was. The surgery had taken a toll on my body. The betrayal had taken a toll on my soul. But the truth, that first night sleeping without him under the same roof, I felt peace for the first time in months. I still had a long road ahead. The legal process, the emotional recovery, the shame that somehow always finds its way in even when we know we didn't do anything wrong. But I wasn't broken. I was healing, and I was just getting started. The days after filing for divorce were strangely quiet. I expected more chaos, more begging or anger from Daniel, but he went silent. Maybe he thought I'd cool off and change my mind. Maybe he was too ashamed, or too much of a coward, to fight back. Either way, the silence was a relief. I spent most of my time at my sister's. Megan had cleared out her spare room and made it feel like home. Soft blankets, my favorite snacks, fresh flowers on the windowsill. She didn't ask too many questions. Just let me be. Sometimes we sat in silence watching old sitcoms, and sometimes I cried into her lap like a child. Both felt healing. My lawyer kept things moving. The more we dug into our finances, the more I realized how much Daniel had hidden from me. There were hotel charges, expensive dinners, even gifts I never received. I guess Melissa had. It was like discovering another secret life behind a curtain I never knew existed. One night, about 3 weeks after I left, I got a message request on social media. From Melissa. At first, I stared at it, unsure if I should open it at all. But curiosity got the better of me. Her message was short. I didn't know. I thought you two were already separated. I'm sorry. That was it. I didn't respond. Maybe she was lying. Maybe she wasn't. Either way, it didn't matter. She owed me nothing. My pain wasn't hers to fix, but something about her message kept circling my mind. Had Daniel told her we were done before we actually were? Had he painted me as the bad guy to make himself feel better? It wouldn't surprise me. A week later, I had my first real breakdown. The strong front I'd been holding onto cracked wide open. I was alone in the bathroom when it hit me. How permanent everything was now. My body still hurt some days. My energy hadn't fully returned. I'd lost not just a kidney but a husband, a future I believed in. My whole identity as a wife had vanished overnight. I curled up on the bathroom floor and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. When Megan found me, she didn't try to talk me down. She just sat beside me, handed me a bottle of water, and said, "Let it out." I did. Every last scream, every ugly cry, every "why me" that had been building since the moment I saw those texts. The next morning, something shifted. I woke up and didn't feel heavy. Not light exactly, but grounded, like the worst of the storm had passed, like the sky was finally clearing. I started going outside again, just walks at first, slow and short, but it helped. I met a therapist Megan recommended, and within one session, I realized just how much of myself I had lost trying to be a good wife. The truth was, I had seen red flags with Daniel for years. Not huge ones, but tiny ones I'd brushed aside. The way he always needed control. How he never really supported my career. How he'd twist arguments into being my fault. I had loved him so deeply, I'd blinded myself to all the ways he made me feel small. One session turned into many. I started journaling again. I unfollowed mutual friends who stayed loyal to him. I set boundaries. I started focusing on myself, not as someone's wife or someone's savior, but just as me. And then came the final blow. Daniel sent me a letter, not an email. A handwritten letter, 5 pages long. It was full of apologies, excuses, and pleas. He said he missed me. that he realized what he'd done too late, that Melissa wasn't worth it, that he was empty without me. He said the surgery changed him, made him scared and impulsive, and that he couldn't live with what he'd done. At the end, he wrote, "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'll spend the rest of my life hoping you'll give me one." I read it once, then I burned it. Not because I was angry, but because I finally didn't feel anything anymore. Daniel had taken so much from me, my health, my peace, my trust, but I wouldn't let him take my future. 6 months passed. 6 months of rebuilding my life piece by piece. I finalized the divorce, cut all ties with Daniel, and moved into my own place, a tiny apartment with creaky floors and too much sunlight, but it was mine. It didn't smell like his cologne. It didn't have reminders of broken promises. It was a clean slate. I started going back to work part-time. My boss was understanding, and my coworkers welcomed me like I'd never left. Getting back into a routine helped more than I thought it would. Every day, I felt more like myself. Not the woman who gave up her body for a man who didn't deserve it, but the woman who survived it all anyway. People sometimes asked how I was doing, and I'd smile politely and say, "Getting better." But the real answer was more complicated. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days I still woke up aching, not just from the scar across my side, but from the ghost of what I thought I had. Other days, I'd laugh without guilt, and it would surprise me, like joy had crept in without asking. I didn't tell many people the full story, only those I trusted deeply, because telling it meant reliving it. And I was learning that my peace was more important than anyone's curiosity. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes in my new place, I found a photo of Daniel and me from our honeymoon. We were on a beach, both tanned and glowing, arms wrapped, around each other like nothing could ever go wrong. For a second, I froze. Then I tore it in half and tossed it in the trash. Not out of hate, but out of release. That girl in the photo didn't know what was coming. But this girl, the one standing barefoot in her own apartment, alive and healing, she knew how to survive. A few weeks later, I got a call from the hospital. They were doing a routine follow-up on kidney donors and asked how I was adjusting. I told them the truth. I was healthy, stable, and moving forward. The nurse on the other end paused, then said, "You're one of the bravest donors we've had. Just know what you did matters." Her words hit harder than I expected, because it did matter. Even if Daniel didn't deserve it, the act itself mattered. Giving someone life, even someone who turned around and broke me, was still an act of love. It didn't make me weak. It didn't make me naive. It made me strong, generous, human. That was the moment I stopped feeling regret. I'd given a kidney to a man who turned out to be a coward. But I'd also proven to myself just how far I was willing to go for love, and how far I was willing to go for myself when it all came crashing down. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror and traced the scar across my side. For the first time, I didn't see a wound. I saw a badge, a reminder that I gave everything and survived the betrayal that followed. And as I stepped out the door into the sun, keys in hand, head held high, I knew one thing for certain. He may have taken a part of my body, but I took back my whole damn life.